All right, got 5:30. Go ahead and call the meeting to order. Can we please do the roll call?
Chairman York.
Here.
Vice Chairman Salazar Garza. Here. Commissioner Miller is absent. Commissioner Mandel.
Here.
Commissioner Munoz. Absent. Commissioner Hedrick.
Here.
Commissioner Budd.
Here.
Commissioner Cantu.
Here.
Commissioner Teichelman.
Here.
We have a quorum present to conduct this meeting.
Thank you very much. We're going to skip the reading of the rules for public comment because it doesn't look like we have any public here to comment. So we'll move on to approval of absences for Commissioners Budd and Munoz.
Make a motion to approve.
I second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Moving on to approval of minutes from the June 11th meeting.
Commissioner Mandel, I move that we approve the minutes from June 11, 2025.
I'll second.
All right, got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Moving on to consent public hearing, items A and B.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Andrew Demas with Development Services, starting with item number 2, Checkout London Weber, which is a preliminary plat. Item number 3, Bayfront Terrace Block 4, Lots 7R and 8R, which is a final plat. Item number 4, Southside Storage Tract preliminary. And under time extensions, item number 5, we have Ocean Breeze Subdivision. And item number 6, Flamingo Resort Bungalows PUD, Plan Unit Development. Under letter A of plats, items 2, 3, and 4, staff has determined the plats meet local government code as well as the UDC. And under time extensions, item 5 and 6, staff recommends approval. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Thank you, Mr. Demas. I have 2 quick questions on the time extensions. Item 5, Ocean Breeze. Just curious, does the plat reflect the latest? It looks like it was approved back in 21 or drawn 21, 22. Does it reflect the latest flood maps?
That was one of the notes. So it did have the latest noted as far as on the drawing itself, but the note needs to be updated.
Okay.
So the map was correct. The note is a little bit off.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I think I emailed about this, and I don't remember if you responded or not, but is it, just for everyone's knowledge, is it allowable for us as a commission to approve a time extension conditionally and say, yes, it's approved, but you need to update this, FEMA background stuff that has now updated?
It's not so much a condition as it's a Scrivener's error, but we went ahead and let the applicant know, so they're going to make the correction.
So it's kind of something that would just get updated prior to recordation?
It's just like a typo. So when we find things, we do one final scan before recordation to make sure signature blocks are in the right place, there are no typos. You would be surprised how many plats still say 2024 on them, and we have to make sure it says 25 or to leave the box blank. So we do one final sweep before it goes to the courthouse.
Yeah, we have to update those all the time. Some of the signs today were blank on the year, and that was smart. The other time extension, Flamingo Bungalows, I remember this one, since it's a PUD, and there's the PUD is still here, right? It doesn't go away. I know it's not like a special permit, but I wondered, because of that PUD, and I think when that was approved, since then, CCW has changed their policy with respect to water, the public-private water thing. Do you know if that would affect that utility plan?
It can. So PUDs the funny thing about them is they have a 24-month shot clock on them. So when we get close, and I believe this one's going to expire in August, if I remember off the top of my head, thank you, Elena, she's nodding. They have 2 routes. They can either go back through the entire process to extend the time frame of the PUD, in which you open Pandora's box, or what the language in the PUD and the UDC says, you can have a complete building application that continues to keep this version of the PUD alive and therefore under the code in which it was approved. So it's in, the applicant holds their own destiny in their hands.
Have they submitted any kind of building application? Nope. Okay, do you remember, or did you look at the utility plan for this one? I'm just wondering if they have like a public water line that if they submitted this today, the city would say, or CCW
I'm sure I glanced at it. I don't remember the pipe size, but I remember it was coming off of Palmyra since there was.
You don't remember if it was public water?
It has to be. That we wouldn't have allowed private, even old code didn't allow private because of fire protection.
So how does that work? Because now, CCW doesn't want any public water on private property. And the last few PUDs, I know my firm's done, even though it's a PUD, it's kind of like a subdivision. It's still been private with a backflow preventer. Is that something, their plat was approved and their utility plan was approved, but will they still have to adhere to the latest and greatest codes with respect to water when they submit their plans?
For the public improvements, it's a good question. So Bria's not here, but I would say first pass is going to always be what is current code. And then if we look at from a historical perspective, under which code was it passed, we then have to look at the delta of how much of a difference if it was. If it was something nominal, obviously we're going to facilitate however we can. I know from just experience, like you mentioned, on other PUDs, you either have the line stop and you have a backflow preventer, or you create your access easement as a / utility easement, and then you put your.
Yeah, and that's what we did on several right after they changed that policy, but now they're, if they're new, they just say, no, we want it private. And that's why I was curious, because I know they really want them all to be private water now, so I guess we'll just see how that one turns out.
PUDs are funny because they're case by case. Some of them are very easy to just put an L shape like yours, like you had on I think it was Running Light or Granada, where it's a big L shape. It's very easy to connect. Others where it gets into dead end mains, that's where CCW doesn't want to touch.
Okay, commissioners, have any other questions for staff?
I have a question, and with regards to number 5, they were saying they were requesting the extension because they're waiting on the Army Corps of Engineers to give a wetlands determination.
Correct.
I guess 2 questions. How long does that generally take that you've seen? And do we know for a fact that they've already done that?
Based on their letter, they're saying they have submitted. I've seen Army Corps or the determination takes 6 months, 8 months sometimes. It just really depends. They have to determine, does it ultimately connect to a body of water, and therefore it's a jurisdiction. I mean, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but just for the folks out there in TV land, that hard determination of whether or not it is truly somehow connected to a body of water to therefore make it jurisdictional. Depending on the clerk that takes it, it's like dealing with the GLO. Literally the sand blows one way, that line has moved, the sand blows the other way, okay, you're safe. And that's why it takes so long to hear back.
Do we know what their reasoning was for the, I guess, for the first or second extension, if this is the 3rd request?
That I'll have to investigate further on the.
I'm just thinking if there ends up being a 4th request in the future, then they won't be able to say, hey, I'm still waiting on the Army.
Right, it will not take more than a year, that's for sure.
Okay, thank you.
You actually reminded me of another question I had on Flamingo. So there's the Army Corps one, I understand. The other one just said, hey, market conditions, which is, yeah, that happens, but that's, to me, like Army Corps says, we're progressing, we're doing our plans, don't make us start over. But with this, it's just a, hey, we're not ready to go yet. So how does that work then, since now we or staff already knows that they just don't want to proceed because it doesn't, the economy's not right. But if their deadline comes up for the PUD to expire and they just submit a building application that's kind of hastily done, how does that work with staff? And is there a shot clock on a building application expiring if they don't actually do anything?
Excellent, all excellent questions. So the first big answer is, well, I'll save that 1 second. The quick answer on the building permit is typically building permits last 6 months. The way the UDC is written, though, it just says they have to submit a complete building application. Doesn't say it has to stay alive, doesn't say what kind of building application. Technically, if I submitted a site work permit only to just
I know people use like demolition permits and stuff.
If I submit a demolition permit, if I submit a BCC, if I submit anything that is a permit, quote unquote, I have checked the box, and it does not have an expiration in the UDC of if that permit expires, therefore the clock starts up again. That's something we'll have to address. To the bigger answer, the macro scale of your question is, I think at some point, which would fall more under future agenda items, Planning Commission would need to have, I think we should have a workshop on how time extensions are reviewed and issued. We don't have policy set in the UDC. We don't say 3 strikes, you're out. We don't say these are legitimate criteria which should say yes to a time extension and these should not. Very similar to Board of Adjustment. Board of Adjustment, when they meet, they have 5 things they have to meet as a review criteria. If you don't check 5 boxes, that gives the board a very easy out to say no. They can still say yes on their own volition, but that checklist is very simple to say, this is our review criteria of how we justify whether or not you should or should not get a time extension. You can still plead your case and make your plea to the commission. I think that's something we should do going forward and incorporate that into the UDC. Now with all these state statutes passing, it's a good time. The book's going to be open. We can clean up a lot of things quickly. And that's one of them that's kind of always been in the back of my head for years of it's, we have those that are going on 7, 8 extensions now. Now, granted, some of those were when we were at a 6-month shot clock, but still on paper, it doesn't look good.
Right, I understand. That's why I'm asking. I know you had mentioned wanting to look at that, and I think that would be wise in the future. And this is just their first one, right?
This, for Ocean Breeze, it's their 3rd, and for Flamingo, it's their 2nd.
It's their second. Was their first a year, or was it 6 months?
So we've had the year policy adopted going on, I'd say almost 2 years now. So the first one would have had to have been for a year.
So they're 2 years in now, okay.
The other concern is, of course, time extensions, as your question was earlier, Chairman, about water requirements from CCW. The longer you prolong a time extension, I hate using the word grandfather to me, but I'm so trained to use legal nonconforming. You keep them under an older code, and when we do have a formal UDC switch, which is inevitable,
Right.
they get stuck in the past, and we start to get confused. Well, what rule were they under? When did they start their meetings?
Well, that's what was driving my questions, because they're just saying, well, economy's not right, we want to wait. Okay, well, then maybe you need to update to the current codes when you build, is kind of what my thought process was. But
Which I think, and Buckle, correct me if I'm wrong, you could put conditions, I would say, on a time extension, maybe. Not to put them on the spot,
yeah,
but
so could
a
we,
bigger discussion.
could we, for example, could we approve a time extension with the condition that when they submit their, utility, their public improvement plans, that they adhere to the current codes as of today or as of the time they submit?
Probably not. They're going to argue that the vesting statute provides them their vesting.
So we would have to actually
Just-
deny the time extension and have them resubmit, but that makes them then have to resubmit, start from the beginning?
Yes. Now, when that has happened, because I'm sure staff will tell you that's in the audience too, Mark, we've had plats expire maybe 3 months after, and they realize, hey, my plat expired, I didn't even know, can you help me? I kind of use my thumb and say, okay, well, if you didn't have major comments that were outstanding and you're around the 30-day mark, yes, we can make you go through a formal appeal, you come back to planning commission, but good judgment would say, I can sort of drag you back into time extension. You're not far out of reach. You're 6, 8 months out of reach. It's a lot harder for us as staff to make the argument administratively to say, I'm sorry you're not tracking your projects. We don't like denying folks. We don't like seeing expirations because that's in all honesty, it's more work for us. The good news is, since you've already gone through the process, usually that second review is a lot quicker on a resubmittal because we've already done all the heavy lifting. You're just going to reinitiate your comments.
Okay.
So just curious, if we wanted to, would we be able to deny a 12-month request and say, hey, we won't give you 12 months, we'll give you 3 months or 6 months or whatever number we would like to?
We would have to place in the UDC that language to say you have these options at your disposal for time extensions.
So we couldn't do that as of today?
No.
Okay.
If we were to have a workshop on something like this, what would that consist of? Like right now, all the questions that we have, is this going to be something that can simplify some of these questions and some of the things that are happening with these extensions?
Simplify is always a tricky word. I would say it brings clarity to why you say yes or no to time extensions. So it's,
Well, if there's some requirements, on the first, second, maybe going on third, fourth extension, maybe there may be something to state, well, not on your third, we're going to require you to.
I can tell you in 17 years, I can count on one hand and have fingers left over of how many denials of time extension. I can actually only think of 3. And they were the only reason, and in others that should be denied was because they had other projects in queue, like reimbursements or construction agreements, participation agreements that kept them alive. But I think for all transparency reasons, Planning Commission doesn't give really a peek into why you say yes or why you should say no. Establishing a review criteria levels the playing field to say, if you can check these boxes, Planning Commission is saying yes equally and fairly compared to every other submittal. It's not just, okay, we'll say yes to you, but we may say no to you. This is
I think
why we
that's
say yes,
something that,
why we say no.
like the DS tag group, when they're looking at revising the UDC, that's something they could look at, coming up with like a checklist or guidelines for time extension.
Well, I think it'd just be good for us to be more familiar with it and probably consider something that would educate us so we can make it simple for us to approve or disapprove.
I think it'd be a good idea.
And just so I'm clear, so
Yes, sir.
for those changes to happen, they would have to update the UDC?
Correct.
Okay. And I do have another request. Whenever we are doing extensions, is there any way you would be able to also tell us if any of these plats have participation agreements on them? So that way, you know, we can also consider that when we're giving these extensions?
Yeah,
Not a problem.
participation, reimbursement, or
Do they have any- yeah,
you know, like
kind
even the
of-
GLO thing, if there's any other stuff that, you know, would be a reason to help, you know, to keep them going, that stuff that they're waiting on kind of out of their hands, it's good to know.
Nope, make
Yeah, because it may even be something where, you know, they update the UDC to say, hey, you know, you can extend it, but maybe, you know, if you extend it, well, now you got to get in the back of the line for your reimbursement instead of, you know, you extend it 3, 4, 5 times and you're still in front of other people who have projects ready to go that should be reimbursed ahead.
And you just named a big thing that we discuss internally is money gets tied up, it gets earmarked, and then it's encumbered, you can't touch it, but there are folks with shovel-ready projects ready to
It was
use it.
earmarked like 10 years ago, and you're on
Yeah.
your 8th extension.
Yeah. Great,
good
appreciate
point.
it.
All right, any other questions? All right, seeing none, we will open up public hearing. Seeing none of that, we will close public hearing. Does anybody have further discussion or a motion?
I move that we approve items 2 through 6 as presented by staff.
I second.
All right, got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to director's report.
Other than you beat me to it, other than the workshop question I was going to bring up, since we kind of answered already that question, we'll come up with a date internally and pass it out to PC members to see what works with your schedules. I would hope all 9 of you are here, of course.
Great,
All right,
sounds good.
cool. With that, we are adjourned.